Hi there, and welcome to a project video where you'll build and deploy an entire Google search clone. Sounds crazy, right? With the ability to search for up-to-date results, news, images, and videos, modern UI, dark mode, and much more, this completely responsive Google clone is the perfect project you can build to master the use of modern React.js. In this one video, you'll learn React best practices, such as React context and hooks. I'll give you a complete introduction to Tailwind CSS, what it is, what are its advantages, and how you can start using it right away. You'll then learn how to create a modern UI using Tailwind CSS completely from scratch. And most importantly, you'll learn how to fetch data from Google Search API using RapidAPI. Essentially, you'll become the master of working with APIs. This is the first project on this channel I've built using Tailwind CSS. So, if you'd like to see some more Tailwind projects or a complete Tailwind guide, like this video and let me know in the comments. If this video gets 5,000 likes, I'll create another Tailwind video. At the end of this video, we're also going to deploy this Google search application so that you can share it with your friends, put it on your portfolio, and get a job. Before we dive into the project, I have an important announcement for you. For months now, you guys have been asking me, which Visual Studio Code extensions do you use? So, instead of creating an entire video, to save you guys some time, I've compiled all the best Visual Studio Code extensions in just one list. You can download it completely free by clicking the link in the description. Enjoy! With that said, let's dive straight into the video. Before creating a folder for our project code, we must first visit RapidAPI. The link is going to be down in the description. The making of this entire app is possible only due to RapidAPI, because we are using their Google Search API. This API is just one of hundreds of thousands of APIs available on their API hub. In this video, you're going to learn how to use most of the endpoints from this API, how to get search, images, news, and even videos. So, to be able to use these APIs, make sure to use the RapidAPI link in the description, and then you can click sign up or log in. In this case, I'm going to log in since I already have the account. You can log in with Google, GitHub, Facebook, or just your regular email. Once you're in, you'll be redirected to Rapid's API Hub, where you'll be able to find hundreds of thousands of APIs. This was the first step in our video. Now, let's create our React application, and then later on, we're going to call these APIs straight from our React application. Before we go ahead and get started, I just wanted to let you know that the entire codebase for this project is up on GitHub. So, the link is going to be down in the description. If you at any point get stuck, have some questions, or simply don't feel like typing some code parts out, you can come here and finish your application. If you like this project, definitely click the link in the description and give it a star. Now, let's dive right in. As always, we're going to start by creating a new folder on our desktop. I'm going to name it Goggle, a completely unique search engine. Once you have that, you can open your code editor of choice. In this case, I have an empty Visual Studio Code window. Once you have it, simply drag and drop your folder into your code editor of choice. And finally, once you have it, go to View and then Terminal. We're going to use this Visual Studio Code's built-in terminal to create our React application. And we can do that by running npx create-react-app and then / to initialize it in the current directory. We can press the enter key and we're going to wait about a minute and then we'll be right back. And our React application has been initialized. As you can see, we have a few files and folders here. The one we really need to focus on is going to be the source folder. This is where our entire React application lies. Now, there are a lot of files and folders we won't need, so what I usually like to do is simply delete the source folder completely, and then simply right-click, new folder, and create it from scratch. That way, we can create all the files and only the files that we need. The first and most important file that every React application needs to have is going to be the index.js. This file is going to be the connection between our React application and our index.html. In here, we need to say import React from React. Also, import React DOM from React-DOM. Then we need to import the app from /app. This app is a functional component we haven't created yet. And then finally, we need to call React DOM.render. We need to call our app like this as a self-closing component. And then we need to attach it to the DOM by saying document.getElementById and then a string of root. What this is going to do is if we go to our public and then index.html, this HTML looks a bit weird, but if we simply space it out like this, remove some of the comments like this one, and finally this one, you're going to notice that this, the simplest possible HTML page that only has one div with an ID of root. So essentially what we're saying React to do is we're saying connect our entire application and display it in our div with an ID of root. While we're here, we can also change the title, something like Goggle should do. And that's it. Now we need to create our application. So this is going to be the second file in our source, new app.js. Our app.js is going to be a simple functional component, so we can use the shortcut called RAFCE, which is going to create a React arrow function with a normal export. There we go. And in here, we can simply have an h1 that's going to say app. Now, if what I've done just now seems like some sort of a magic to you, that's because you've never heard of the extension called React Snippets. So if you go to extensions and then search for snippets, you should be able to see ES7, React, Redux, GraphQL, React Native Snippets. You can install that, and then you should be able to run the RAFC command, which is going to simply create this boilerplate code for you. Great. With that said, we are ready to install Tailwind CSS to our React application. Let's do that right now. To install Tailwind, I've split my window in half to have our code editor on one side and tailwindcss.com on the other. So what you can do is go to the top right of the page and go to documentation. Then you can click Start Learning under Read the Docs. Once you're there, you'll see that there are a few integration guides. The one we are going to go with is Create React App. The first step is to create your project, and we've already done that. So let's move to the second one, which is setting up Tailwind CSS. You have to have Node 12.13.0 or higher, so keep that in mind. And then you can simply install Tailwind via npm. So you can copy this line right there, go to View, Terminal, let's clear it by running the clear command, and simply pasting. npm install and copy this line. This is going to install all the necessary dependencies to run Tailwind. This is going to take a moment, so let's take a short break and we'll be right back. Once we're done with the installation, we have to install Krakow. Krakow is a Create React App configuration override. Quite a clever name. So you can simply do that by running npm install @krakow/krakow. We're going to give it a minute and then we'll be right back as well. Krakow installed pretty quickly, and now that we're done with that, we have to simply use Krakow instead of React scripts. So what we can do is go to our package.json, and then inside of here, we have to replace React script start, build, and then test. So I'm simply going to take these three from here and replace these three lines. Now we have Krakow start, Krakow build, and Krakow test. Now that we're done with that, we also have to create a Krakow config.js. So right inside of the root of our folder, let's create a new file called krakow.config.js. And then inside of there, you can simply copy and paste what you have in the Tailwind CSS docs. There we go. Finally, we can scroll a bit more down and we can create our own Tailwind configuration file by simply running npx and then running this command. So let's do that as well. And there we go. Our minimal tailwind.config.js has been created. If you want to customize your Tailwind experience, you can do so in this file. For now, we're going to leave it empty, but we're going to change just one line. We're going to configure just one line, which is the purge. So simply feel free to copy this and then paste it instead of the purge right here, line 2. There we go. And one final step is including Tailwind in our CSS. So inside of the source, we're going to create one new file, which is going to be called global.css. Inside of there, you can simply copy these 3 lines. Finally, we have to import this global CSS in our index.js. So inside of here, that's simply going to be import./global.css inside of a string. That's it. Let's scroll down and see if there's something more. Nope, that's it. We are finished and we are ready to run npm run start. So let's maximize our code editor. Let's close all of our files and folders and let's simply run npm start. If we've set up everything correctly, we should be able to see our React application initialize on localhost 3000. And there we go. You can see app on the top left. I can immediately notice that this is not a standard font, which means that Tailwind has been installed successfully. Now we are ready to start creating our application. Of course, we're going to start creating our application in the app.js. But first, we need to create a components folder with a few components. So inside of the source, let's create a new folder called components. And then inside of there, let's create a navbar.jsx, also footer.jsx, and then finally routes.jsx. These are the first 3 components we need to create. Inside of the routes, feel free to run rafc command. And if you have the snippets extension, you should be able to immediately get the import line and also the export const functional components. Now that we have that, inside of the routes, we can simply render an h1 that is going to say routes. I'm going to copy everything in this file and paste it in the footer, but I'm just going to change the routes to footer. And then one more time for the navbar. Inside of here, I'm simply going to change the routes to navbar. Now we have 3 different components that we can import inside of the app.js. So right here, we can say import. That's going to be navbar. Inside of the curly braces, because we are using export const and not export default, from /components / that's going to be navbar. Now we can just duplicate this 2 more times. The second line is not going to be navbar, rather it's going to be footer. And the third one is going to be routes. Great. Our application is also going to contain a state. So at the top, right next to React, we can import in curly braces, use state hook. So now, just below the opening line of our functional component, we can create a new state field, something like const, and then in array destructuring, we can say dark theme, and also set dark theme, because we want to know at all times, are we currently on dark or are we not? At the start, dark theme is going to be set to false. Now we can start creating our layout. We're going to give our first div a class name, and it's going to be dynamic class name. So inside of there, we can say if it is dark theme, then we can return a string of dark, else we're simply going to return an empty string. This is how you use a ternary operator. Now, inside of this div, I'm going to teach you how to write your first Tailwind CSS line ever. It's going to be a div, and that div is going to have a class name equal to, and now in here, we can write all of the different utility classes that Tailwind CSS offers. It might be a good idea to put this side by side so that you can see the changes live. Let's do that right away. I've put the browser and the text editor side by side, so now we should be able to see real time what's happening. Let's add something inside of this div, something like app, and let's save it. We still cannot see a difference, but let's try adding a background. So inside of here, I'm going to say BG as in background, gray, and then 100. As soon as I save that, not sure if you can notice it, but behind this app, there is a background which is kinda grayish. Of course, we can go with a darker gray with 500, and you can instantly notice that. So by simply saying BG gray 100, we can notice that nice background color. Now, you might be wondering, how did I know that there was a BG class, a gray color class, and also 100? What does that mean? I've opened the Tailwind CSS documentation page, and I'm going to extend it until we can see the left side sidebar. There we go. Let's browse through some core concepts. Tailwind CSS is built utility first. So if you look at this nice alert pop-up, you can notice that this is the classic approach to build it. We have some HTML, and then we have separate style sheet, but that is not ideal. If we scroll below, you can notice how that is done using Tailwind. We have just a bit longer classes, but everything is in one space, HTML and CSS. We end up with the same end product, but we don't have to have a separate style sheet. So now we were talking about background and colors. So let's go to colors, and you can notice that there are a lot of built-in colors, gray, red, and we can keep going on and on. All colors go from 50 to 900. So 50 is really whitish yellow or whitish red or whitish green. The lower the number, the lighter the color will be. So if you go with the red 100, it's going to be really light, but red 900 is going to be really, really dark. Now you know that BG gray 100 is going to be really, really light gray. Great, with that said, let's keep it going. I'm going to put this back on the side, and the second class I'm going to provide is I'm going to say dark and then column, BG gray 900. This is saying if we are in the dark mode, then instead of BG gray 100, do BG gray 900. So this is how we switch the modes. Then on dark mode, so dark column, we also want to change the text. So we can say text gray 200. And we're going to say min-h-screen. So if you're ever wondering what are some of these classes doing, just feel free to go here, go quick search for anything or Control K, and then search min-h-screen. What is that doing? That sets the minimum height of an element using the min-h. That's it. In here, you can read what is it doing and how you can use it. That's going to be all that we need on this div. Right now, you cannot see a lot of change because we don't have different modes yet, but let's start creating our navbar and then you'll see the full power of Tailwind CSS. Right inside of here, we're going to render our navbar. Then below that, we're going to render our routes, which is going to be videos, search, or news. And then finally below that, we're going to render our footer. Now we're making use of all three components and you can see them right here. So the next logical step would be to implement the navigation bar. Let's head to that component and let's code it out right now. Our navigation bar is going to be a good example of how we can use Tailwind CSS to create extremely custom styles really quickly. We can start off with this div that's going to represent our navigation bar. Let's give it a class name, and let's start typing our classes. We're going to say p-5. That means padding 5. Then we can say pb-0. That means padding bottom 0. Then we can define this div as a flex container. And we can also give it a flex-wrap property. Let's save it. And as you can see, now it has padding on the sides, but we cannot yet notice anything else because now there's only one word, which is navbar inside of it. Now we can specify how this is going to look like on different devices. So we can say sm colon, and then we can say justify -between. That's going to be on small devices. Usually it's going to be justify -center. Then we can say items -center and also border -b. That means that there's a gray border on the bottom. Then when we're using the dark mode, we can say dark border -gray -700. That's going to be a darker gray. And then also usually border -gray -200. Great. Now we created the div that's going to represent our navigation bar. Now this might be a bit weird because this line is seemingly really long, but imagine how many CSS classes would we have to write. Again, this has some advantages, but also some disadvantages, where you're going to end up with really long lines of JSX. Now let's create a div inside of that div, and that div is going to have a class name equal to flex to make it a flex container. It's going to be justify dash between items dash center space dash x dash 5, which is going to space everything out on x-axis. And then finally we can say w dash screen. Usually you'll notice the more you start using Tailwind CSS, the more is it going to make sense. But for example, this last one might not be so obvious. So let's go to our Tailwind CSS, Control K, and search for w dash screen. And in here, you can see all of the different properties that represents max width, utilities for setting the maximum width of an element. Great. Now inside of there, we can render a React router DOM link. So let's import. That's going to be link. And that link will be coming from React-router-DOM. Now, if you've been paying attention, you're going to notice that we haven't yet installed React Router DOM or any other dependency for that matter. So that's why we're going to get failed to compile. Let's go ahead and open our terminal by going to View and then Terminal. And let's install all of the necessary dependencies by first pressing Ctrl-C and then Y. And now we can install them. To install the dependencies, we can type npm I and then we can start listing them out. First, we're going to need React-router-DOM. We're also going to need React-player to play videos, and also React-loader-spinner. We're going to also use a utility hook called useDebounce. So these are going to be all the packages that we're going to use for this project. You can install them, it's going to take a second, and then we can continue with our application. The packages have been installed, and we can again run npm start. Once you do that and reload, you should be able to see that we no longer have an error. So now we can make use of this link we just imported. We can say link, and that is going to be not a self-closing component, but inside of there, it's going to have a to property, and we're going to go to just /, which is home. Then inside of there, we can have a paragraph, and that paragraph is going to have a few class names. The first one is going to be text-2xl to make it really big, and we can immediately start adding the text to see what are we actually changing. In there, I'm going to type goggle. I know it's not that creative, but there it is. And then I'm going to paste the magnifying glass icon, which you can find by simply searching this on Google. I'm going to save it, and then we're going to get an error, which says that we cannot use a link outside of a React router DOM. So to easily fix this, we can go back to index.js, and then inside of here, we need to make use of our browser router. So we can say import, in curly braces, browser router as router, and that's coming from React-router-DOM. Now we can wrap our application like this. In here, we can have our router, and now we simply need to put our app in between the router, and that's going to allow us to simply switch to different pages. Of course, we have to add a comma at the end of the router, and that's going to be all that we have to do. After you save that, we can go back, and our navigation bar should work. Let's reload the page, and there we go. With big letters, we can see goggle. We're also going to give it bg-blue-500. As you can see, that easily switched that. And I've just noticed that I'm zoomed in 500%, so this is not how it looks like for you. I'm just going to reset, and there we go. This is how it should look like. We're also going to say font-bold to make it bolder. And let's say text-white to make it white. Let's add padding Y, that means on top and bottom 1. And let's say padding X, which means on left and right, which is going to be 2. Let's save it, and there we go. This is our button to go back to the front page. We can also make it rounded by simply saying rounded. There we go. And let's define some dark classes. So dark, we're going to say bg-gray-500, and also dark text is going to be text-gray-900. There we go. This is our button, and we created it simply by using some of the classes. Now, below that link, we're going to have one more button. This is going to be a basic button with a type equal to button. And we're going to use this button to change the theme. So we can say on click and simply make a callback function out of it. And we can say set dark theme is equal to, and we can say not dark theme, which means that we have to pass the dark theme and set dark theme as prompts to our navigation bar component. So that's going to be in the app. And then inside of here, we can simply pass dark theme is equal to dark theme, and also set dark theme is equal to set dark theme. Now we're getting these props inside of here, so we can immediately destructure them and say dark theme and set dark theme. Great. Let's save it. There we go. We're good. We cannot yet see the button, but let's keep adding some classes and then we're going to see it. Before we add the classes, we can simply say something in there. So we're going to add a dynamic block, and we can say if dark theme, in that case, we can simply render something like light, or else we're going to render a string that's going to say dark. So I'm going to zoom it in a bit, and you can see there is a dark, and it switches between light and dark. Now let's add some classes to our button. I'm going to say class name is equal to text-xl. When it is dark, we can say dark bg-gray-50. Also the text on dark, so dark and then text-gray-900 to make it really dark. And also usually background is going to be bg white. We're also going to add a border to it. We're going to make it rounded-full. We're going to give it some padding on the x-axis of 2 and also padding on the y-axis equal to 1. Okay, let's save it and see how does it look like. There we go. We have our dark button. And then one cool thing we can do is, you've noticed how I've done dark and then colon or SM to do it only on small devices. You can also do hover and then apply a class only if you're hovering over it. So we can say shadow-LG. Now, if we hover over it, you can see that there is a shadow. That just shows you how simple and how powerful Tailwind is. Now again, just to spice it up a bit, I'm going to copy and paste some of the icons or emojis. So on light, I'm going to add a light, and then on dark, we're simply going to add a moon emoji. You can find this icon by simply Googling moon emoji. Great. There we go, and as you can see, it switches the theme. But something doesn't look right here. The theme doesn't appear to be changing. And to make it change, we just have to make one simple change. I've opened our file tree, and let's go to tailwind.config. Inside of here, instead of dark mode is equal to false, we can simply set dark mode is equal to, and then a string that's gonna say class. There we go. I've saved it. And immediately, if you reload the page and press dark mode, you can see, there we go, the dark mode now works. Great. Now I'm going to zoom it out a bit, and I'm going to keep it on the dark mode because honestly, I think it looks better for now. Now below this inner div, we're going to have a search component. So this is going to be a self-closing component that we don't yet have. We have to create it and import it. So I'm going to create a new component called search.jsx. That's also going to be RAFC to create search. In there, I can simply say search for now, and we can import it straight into our navbar by saying import in curly braces. That's going to be search, and it's going to be coming from /search and then /search one more time. Now that we have our search, we can import it by saying import, and that's going to be search in curly braces from /search. Great. Let's save it. and it says search is not defined. Let's see why that is. So if we go to search, search really is there. So I'm going to reload. Sometimes this happens, but now after the reload, we can indeed see the search. So we're going to leave search alone for now because we don't need to implement it yet. Now we're going to focus on the routes, and then only after we have everything else, we can get back to search. So let's close all of the files and move to our routes. Inside of our routes, we're going to import a few things from React Router DOM. And those things are a switch, a route, and then finally a redirect component. These are coming from React Router DOM. Now inside of here, this main div is going to have a class name equal to p-4. That means that it's going to have padding of 4. You can see it immediately moved the routes a bit below. Now we're not going to have an h1, we're going to have a switch component. A switch can only render one route at a time. So let's create our initial route, the root route. So we can say route, the path is going to be exact, and it's going to be path is /. So if we land on /, we're simply going to redirect. So we can call the redirect component and then point to /search. That means that our application is not going to have just a /. We're always going to be on /search. Now the second route is going to be again a route, and then inside of there we can set the path to be equal to an array, like this. Inside of there we can render a string of /search. We can also add one more string, something like /images. Let's also do a string of /news, and then finally a string that's going to say /videos. For all of these paths, more specifically exact paths, we want to render one component, and that component is going to be results. Again, results component doesn't exist yet, so let's create it right now. Inside of our components folder, I'm going to create a new file called results.jsx. One more time is going to be an refc, and I'm simply going to say results in there. Let's save it, go back here, and then finally we need to import it by saying import results, and that's going to be coming from /results. Great. Let's save it and take a look. We can see our results right there, and notice how we are immediately transferred to the /search. We can also go to /videos, for example. And there we go. I misspelled it, so we don't see the results, but if we go to videos, we can see the results right there. Same thing if we go back to root, we're going to be redirected to /search. And finally, before we start implementing the real results, we're just going to render out the footer just so we can see something on the bottom. To create a footer, we can go to our footer component, and we just have to add some simple styling. More specifically, to this div, we're going to add a class name, and that's going to be text-center. You can notice how immediately, with just one class, similar to CSS name, it immediately got moved to the center. It's going to have padding-10, so that's going to give it a lot of padding. Margin top, MT, is going to also be 10, and it's going to have border-T to give it top border to basically make it look like a footer. Then we're going to say dark. On dark mode, it's going to have border-gray-700, and also usually it's going to have border-gray-200. And inside of there, we can say something like 2021 goggle, and that's going to be incorporated. There we go. This is a really simple footer. We can see those lines even better on our dark mode. Now is the time that we really get to the point of this application, and that is using RapidAPI to fetch live Google results. Let's do that straight away. To implement how results are going to look like, we first have to get the results themselves. So let's start with that. I'm going to close all the files and folders, and we're going to create our next file. More specifically, a new folder. We're going to create a folder called contexts. And inside of there, we can create our new context or our file, which is going to be called result context provider.js. Great. Inside of there, we're first going to start with importing a few things. More specifically, React. Also from React, that's going to be create context, use context, and finally use state. All of this is coming from React. And I'm going to extend our code a bit so we can see it a bit better. Then we're going to create our context. So we can say result context is going to be equal to create context, and we just call it as a function. Below that, I want to specify the base URL of our API. So we can say const base URL is going to be equal to, and we have to find it on RapidAPI. So make sure to click the link down in the description. That's going to be the Google Search API. And then in here, you'll have the key to subscribe to that endpoint. It's going to lead you to the pricing section where you'll be able to see that it's completely free for the basic package, 600 requests a month. Great. Then you'll be able to test the API and also see what you have to do to make a request. So here is the URL. We can copy that, go back to our code, and simply paste it here as a string. We don't need the entire thing, of course. We're going to implement this search ourselves, so we're simply going to go under v1 without the ending / like this. And finally, we have to create our context provider, so we can say export const. That's going to be result context provider. And that's going to be equal to a basic React functional component. And we immediately want to get from props children. Children is a prop that every single React component has. Now inside of there, we want to create a few state fields. The first one is going to be const, and that's going to be results. And also set results. At the start, that's going to be equal to use state, and we're going to initialize it with an empty array. Then below that, we also need to have the loading state. So I'm going to say is loading, and then also set is loading. That's going to be another use state, which is at the start going to be set to false. And then finally, we also need to have the access to the search term we're looking for. So we can say const search term and also set search term. That's going to be equal to the use state, and this one we want to initialize to an empty string. Then below that, we're going to create our function. More specifically, the get results function. That function is going to be an async function because we want to make some API calls in there. So we want to say async function, and it's going to accept the URL we want to make a call to. So for example, if we want to get the videos, it's going to be /videos. If we want to get the search, that's going to be search, and we can also get the images. This is what I mean by URL. A better name might be type. So which type of results are we looking for? Great. Then inside of there, as soon as we get in the function, we want to set the loading or set is loading to be equal to true. And then we want to make our API call. So we can say const response is equal to await. And then I usually use Axios, but in this case, we can just use basic fetch. And then to make a get request with fetch, we have to provide a string we want to make a request to. So we're going to use a template string and provide that base URL. So essentially, we're calling HTTPS Google Search API version 1, and then we want to add the type onto it. So we can say type. There we go. Now we have the base URL, and then we are appending either /search, /images, /videos, or news. That's going to make our complete request. As the second parameter to it, we need to pass an options object. Inside of there, we can pass our method, which is going to be equal to a string of capital get letters. And the second thing in there is going to be headers. And those headers we can simply copy from RapidAPI. In here, you can see that we have 3 different headers. I'm going to copy them and paste them right here. Of course, to make our application more secure, later on, we're going to store this RapidAPI key into a process environment variable. Finally, how do we get data from something using fetch? Well, now we have the response, so we can say const data is equal to await response.json, and we call it like this. And that data represents our actual results, so we can do set results is equal to data. Finally, once we are at the end of this function, we simply want to set is loading to be equal to false because we're no longer loading. This is going to be it. This is our getResults function. So finally, what do we do with all of these states and these functions? We are going to pass them through the context to the entirety of our React application. We can do so by, at the end, providing a return, and we want to return the result context.provider. There we go. That's going to be not a self-closing component. Remember at the top, we created that context called result context. And now inside of it, as a value, we can pass some things to it. We can make it an object, and we can pass the getResults function and also all the state fields. Results, that's going to be search term, as well as the set search term. What else do we need to pass? And the last thing we have to pass is going to be is loading. There we go. Let's scroll up and see if we're making use of all of our use states. We indeed are. And finally, in between our context provider, we're simply going to render the children. There we go. With that, our result context provider is done. And we're also going to create one extra function to make it easier for us to use the values from this context. We can do that by exporting another function, export const use result context, and that's going to be equal to a function that's simply going to call the use context, and then we provide the result context as the first and only parameter. There we go. This brings us to the end of our result context provider. Now let's use this data inside of our results component to see how does it look like and how we can map over it to show some data. Inside of our results component, we are going to import a few things. First, from React, we're going to import useEffect. Then we're going to import the useLocation hook. That's useLocation from React-router-DOM. We're also going to import the React Player component, which is coming from React-Player. And finally, we need to import a few things that we created. One thing is going to be import in curly braces use result context. And that's going to be coming from / contexts and then / result context provider. Finally, let's make use of our use result context. We can make use of it by saying const and then the structure, results, as well as the is loading property, get results function as well, and then the search term. And that's gonna be coming from equal use result context, and we call it as a hook. That is how context works. We are exporting everything inside of our result context. As you can see, get results, results, search term, set search term, and is loading. And we're simply using that result context right here as a hook. Also, an important thing for this component is going to be the location. So we can say const location is equal to use location from React router DOM. That's going to give us the URL. For example, / images or news or videos and so on. Now inside of here, first thing we want to do is say if we are loading. So if is loading, then we want to return a loading component, which is a self-closing tag. Of course, this loading component is something that we have yet to create. So let's go to components and create a new loading.jsx component. Inside of there, I'm going to do RAFC, and that's going to be the easiest way to create a React component. Then we can import something known as loader, and that's going to be coming from React-loader-spinner. And all that it's going to be is a simple div that's going to have a class name equal to flex. It's going to have justify-center and items-center. So we're basically centering everything. And then inside of there, we want to show a loader component, which is a self-closing component that has a few properties. It has a type equal to puff, P-A-F-F. Also, it has the color equal to hash or bound 00BFFF. It's going to have the height equal to 550 and also the width equal to 80. Great. That's going to be all that you have to do for the loading component. We just, of course, have to import it right here by saying import loading from /loading. Great. Now we are ready to actually return the results. The return of our results component is going to be just a bit different. It's not going to be a usual React component. We are going to have a switch statement, which is going to decide how the results are going to look like. For example, if we are on the /images result, then we want to show images and render the corresponding image look. If we are on the /news, then we want to render, let's say, cards. If we are on videos, we want to render iframes. So this component is going to be quite different, and it's going to teach you that one component doesn't necessarily have to always look the same. Let's create a switch right there. You can use this autofilling, so just a few steps down to this empty box and click the switch. Now inside of there, the thing we need to look for is going to be location.pathname. Let's actually console log that location.pathname just so you can see what that is. Location.pathname. If the location path name is /search, then for now we're simply going to return something like a string that says search. So we can say return a string that says search. We don't need this break. And on the default case, we're simply going to return something like error because we always need to be on one of the specific cases. Great. Now let's save it simply so that we can see what the location.pathname actually is. And after taking a quick look, I immediately noticed that we should be importing this from lowercase React and not an uppercase first letter. There we go. If we now go back and reload, we're going to get a different error. That's good. That's a step in the right direction. So the error now is coming from here. It's saying that we cannot destructure the results because they are undefined, which means that this data we're returning must be undefined as well. So now let's do some live debugging. I'm going to console log this data right here. Okay, so we are not getting data, which means that the error must be happening even sooner. That means it's happening here. It's trying to do something with the results. More specifically, it's trying to destructure them from the use result context. And everything seems to be fine to me. But this is actually one of the most common errors, when everything seems fine, but maybe we're just missing one really obvious thing. So let me spend some time and try searching for that error. And yeah, that was the case. After some thinking, I found the error and it is extremely obvious. We are using context, but in our index.js, we are never actually wrapping this with our context provider. So we have to go inside of our index and we have to import our state or result context provider. So let's go here and import result context provider in curly braces from /contexts and then result context provider. We have to wrap our entire application with our result context provider like this. So we can put this right there. And we have to change this comma right there. There we go. Now we are wrapping our app with the result context provider. And now we have access to these results, is loading and everything else inside every single component in our application. Again, I always want to keep this thing in because they definitely happen to all of us, even YouTubers who are doing programming tutorials. Stuff like this happens, and sometimes you can spend hours looking for a mistake in a really simple thing like this. So the point is, don't be discouraged, just keep it going and you'll get better. Now let's see what our location.path name is. Our location.path name is just /search if we are here, and if we go to /news, then it's going to be /news. So basically, it's anything that's currently after our first /. So we know what we can have. We can have search. I'm going to duplicate this a few more times. We can then have images. We can also have something like news. And finally, we can have videos. So I'm going to duplicate this one more time, and that's going to be videos. Great. So now let's actually create the JSX for our basic search. That's when you go on Google and just search for any topic. Instead of returning a simple string, we're going to return a JSX block by putting a parenthesis here. And then in there, we're going to have one div. This div is going to have a class name of flex, also flex wrap, justify dash between, space dash y dash 6, and then finally sm, px, and then dash 56. There we go. And now inside of that, we can loop over the results. So I'm going to open a new block, say results, !results. It's 2 times in there. And then one more time, !map. Inside of here, we can render a callback function. And instead of normal curly braces, we're going to have parentheses because we want to instantly return something. Right here, we are of course getting one result item, but now we can immediately destructure it to get the link and the title out of it. Now, if you're wondering how do I know there's a link and a title on a specific search term, let me show you. We're going to console log the entire results array. So for now, I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to go back to our result context provider, and I'm going to console log the data. Right there, console log data. If we reload the page, you'll notice that we are never seeing this console log. And that is because if you think about it, we're never actually calling the getResults function. So let's go back in our results and create a new use effect. Use effect, in this case, is going to happen only on the component that mount. That means that this dependency array is going to be left empty, and everything that's inside of this function will be run only at the start of our application, meaning when you reload the page. So inside of there, let's now just call the getResults, and we're going to pass a string into it, just a static string for now. Let's do /search, /q, and then equal to, and then in here we have to enter our search term. Let's do something like JavaScript mastery. And we can also say and num is equal to 40. That means 40 results. Now let's save it and take a look. As you can see, there's that nice loading animation we created, and here is our results array. We have answers, image results, and the main results are right here. JavaScript Mastery YouTube is going to be the first link, so the most important thing is going to be the link and the title of that link, but of course we can also render a description as well. Feel free to do that as extra homework to practice a bit. But of course you can also add description if you feel like it. Now let's go ahead and render those results. So we're mapping over the results and we want to do something with the link and the title. So for each result, we're going to show a div. That div is going to have a key equal to index, and that index we can simply get right here as the second parameter to our map. There we go. Our div is also going to have a class name, and class name is going to be equal to MD. So on medium devices, we can see width is equal to 2/5 of the screen, and also width full. Again, if you're not sure what do these mean, simply copy them, go to Tailwind's website and paste them in. In here, you can see these are the utilities for setting the width of an element. And if you look for 2/5, that's basically a width of 40%. Great. Now inside of that div, we're going to have an anchor tag. And that anchor tag is going to have an href equal to the link we want to point to, a target equal to a string of underscore blank, and a rel equal to no refer. Inside of there, we can render two different p tags. The first p tag is going to have a class name equal to text-sm. And inside of there, we want to render if link.length is greater than 30 characters. In that case, we want to render link.substring, and then we want to take it from 0 to 30. Otherwise, we simply want to render a link. So this is going to take only the first 30 characters of a link if it's above 30. Otherwise, it's lower than 30, so we can render the entire link. Finally, below that, we want to render a title. So we can do another p tag that's going to have a class name equal to text-lg. Hover is going to be equal to underline or colon underline. When dark mode is turned on, we're going to show the text-blue-300, and on normal devices, it's going to be text-blue-700. And inside of there, we're simply going to render the title. Now let's save it and take a look in the browser. I'm going to collapse our console a bit and reload the page. It's loading, as you can see. And for now, we cannot really see anything because we are on the news page. Remember, we're currently doing this only in the case of the /search. So let's go here and go to search. And as you can see, the search results show up. They don't look that good on medium devices right now, but if we expand it a bit, you can see that looks pretty good. If you want to go ahead and make it even more responsive for all devices, you can use the Tailwind properties we learned, something like MD, SM, large, and so on. But for now, it works great on large devices, and also if we switch to mobile, you can see it looks perfect. Great. Now we have the links. If you click them, it's actually going to point you to that specific link, and we essentially made the simplest possible Google search clone. It looks good as well, and it's also mobile responsive. Now, of course, if you want to search for images, our JSX is not going to be the same. It's not going to be 2 paragraphs of text. So let's implement the JSX for images, news, and videos. Now for the images. Images are going to be fairly similar. We're going to return something. That something is going to be a div, and it's going to have a class name equal to flex, flex-wrap, justify-center, and also items-center. So we really want to center everything inside of this div. Now inside of there, we also want to map over the results. So we can say results, dot, but this time we're going to do image_results. And one more time, dot, map. We want to map over something, again, just a normal parenthesis because we want to instantly return something. And from each image, we can immediately destructure the actual image, as well as the link. But this link is an object itself, so we can use one more destructuring assignment inside of there. You can do that by saying colon and then one more pair of curly braces where we can get the links href and a links title. We're also going to get the index as the second parameter of our map. Now we want to render an anchor tag. That anchor tag is going to have a class name equal to sm colon p-3, and usually on all other devices, it's going to be p-5. That's simply padding. Then we're going to give it href, which is equal to href. Also, it needs to have a key equal to index. And finally, it has to have the target equal to underscore blank and the rel equal to no refer. Now, inside of that anchor tag, we can render the self-closing image tag. It's going to have the source equal to image ? .src. It's going to have the alt tag equal to the title. And also it's going to be loading equal to lazy. That's going to just make it lazy load, so we're not loading all images at the same time. And finally, below the image, we're going to have a paragraph tag. It's going to have a class name equal to. We're going to set the width to be 36. Then we're going to have break-words. This is an interesting one, so let's copy it and see what does it do. Back in Tailwind, I'm simply going to paste it, and there we go. They say use break words to add line breaks mid-word if needed. So that means that if we have a really long word, it's simply going to break it into multiple lines. Great. Then we're going to say text-small and also margin top empty 2. Great. Inside of there, we can simply render the title. Let's save it and take a look. Now, of course, we have to go to our images. So I'm manually going to switch to images. We're still searching for JavaScript mastery, but as you can see, we're not getting any results. If we scroll down and go to image results, the length is equal to 0. Let's see what that is about. We're trying to render the image results, but are we ever actually making the request to the images endpoint? Let's take a look. We're simply doing everything to just search. Now we have to make use of the location.path name, not only to get the results for the /search, which is hard-coded right now, but also to /images. So we can add an if statement at the top and say if search term exists. So if there is a search term we're searching for, then we also want to check if location.path name is equal to /videos. In that case, we want to call get results. We want to pass the /search. /q is equal to the search term. And then space videos. So just by saying space videos, we're going to get all the videos for that specific search term. And now else, if we're not searching for videos, in that case, we simply want to call something similar to the line we already had, get results, /, but now it's not going to be search, it's going to be location.path name. Of course, we have to be in a template string so that we can use it. There we go. And the query is no longer going to be just statically typed JavaScript mastery. We can change that to be the thing we're importing from use context, which is going to be search term. And we can leave the number 40 to get the 40 results each time. Of course, we cannot yet know what search term that we have or what the location path name is if we call this only at the start. We have to add a few things to the dependency array. So inside of there, I'm gonna add the search term as well as the location.path name. So anytime that anything in here changes, this function is going to be re-ran. We also have to add the get results in here. There we go. Visual Studio Code is no longer complaining. Now, this is not yet going to work because we don't have the search component implemented yet, but we can do one quick fix to go back to result context provider. And at the start, we're not going to let this be an empty string. We're going to set it to JS mastery. That way we can always get results for a specific search. Now let's save it and take a look in the browser. I reload it and look at that. We're getting an endpoint or a message saying endpoint API v1 images doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and see what that is about. We can immediately notice that it's trying to make a request to API v1 // images. So 2 times /. Let's see where that is coming from. If we go back to results, we can notice that we have a / here. But if you remember what we console logged, the location.path name already contains that / in there, so we didn't actually have to put it here. Let's save it and one more time reload. As you can see, we're making a lot of requests right now, and you want to stop this from running immediately. The reason why it was re-rendering the entire time is because we added this get results here. Sometimes Visual Studio Code doesn't know what's the smartest thing to do. So in this case, we're not going to listen to it. It says React hook use effect has a missing dependency get results. In this case, we're not going to listen to it. We're simply going to remove it from the dependency array. And would you look at that? Now it's no longer reloading and we can see our images. These images are getting pulled from different sources, just like Google does it. This one is from YouTube, complete path to JavaScriptMastery.com. If some code that we've written here, like use effects, ifs, or even switches, seem a bit weird to you, then it might be worth checking out the complete path to JavaScript Mastery. The link is going to be down in the description. But basically, our images now work. And also, if we get back to just search, you can see that the search works as well. There we go. We are done with half of the project right now. We just have to implement the news and the videos. So let's go ahead and do that right now. To implement the news, I'm simply going to copy what we've had on the search because they're quite similar with some minor differences. So right here, we're going to have a return that's going to return a div. That div is going to be flex with a flex wrap justify between space y6 and also smpx56. The only thing we're missing is going to be the items dash center. We're going to loop over the results, but this time it's going to be results.entries. In here, we're not going to get the link, but rather it's going to be links. We're also going to get the ID. So let's do links, ID, source, and the title. These are the things we're getting from one specific news entry. Now, keeping in mind that we have the ID, there's no need for this index. Our first div is going to have a key equal to ID and the class name equal to MD, width is 2/5 and W full. Our anchor tag href is going to be equal to links dot 0 and then dot href. So this is how we're going to get the link of a specific news entry. We're going to leave the target and the rel, but we're going to add one class name, which is going to be equal to hover and then underline. We're only going to keep one paragraph, so I can delete this one. And this paragraph is going to have the text LG, hover. We don't need this hover underline here. And these properties are going to remain, and there we're going to render the title. Finally, below that paragraph, we're going to have one more div. This div is going to have a class name equal to flex, and also it's going to have a property gap-4. Inside of there, we're going to have one more anchor tag, and this anchor tag is going to have an href equal to source dot href. The target is going to be equal to underscore blank, and rel is going to be equal to no referrer. Finally, in there, we're going to render source dot href. Great. This is going to be it for our news article. Let's go ahead and save it and take a look. Okay, to get to our news, we have to go to /news. And if you look into it, you'll see that we first get an error. Results.entries.map is not a function. This is a really interesting occurrence happening right here because we're getting an error even though we have question marks right there. These question marks should prevent us from having an error even if results are empty. Another thing that we can do is at the top, we can destructure the results because as you can see, we're repeating ourselves quite a lot. Results.results, results.image results, and then results.entries. So let's scroll to the top, and where we have results, we can say colon and then curly braces to destructure things out of it. First, we're going to destructure the results, also image underscore results, and finally entries. But entries also means something else in JavaScript. Whenever you have an object, you can call the .entries from that object. So in that case, this might not be the best name for anything that corresponds to an object. So what you can do is say colon and then rename it. In this case, we're going to simply call it news. So now we can scroll down and we can simply remove the results. It's only going to be results. only going to be image results. And finally, it's not going to be entries, it's going to be news. Now let's try to save this and take another look. I'm going to reload the page and we get news.map is not a function, so the same error still happens. Let's add a few console logs to check it out. And we're going to do console log where we simply want to console log the news. Let's save it and take a look. I reloaded the page, and if I scroll to the top, or if I simply click here and then info, then you'll be able to see just the info messages. As you can see, even though we console log just the news, we're still getting a function of entries and not our actual news entries, which is not good. That means that even though we renamed this, it's still taking the basic object property called .entries, which is a function. We need to get the actual results. So we need to make some modifications to how we retrieve the data from our API. For now, I'm not going to destructure this from here, and I'm also going to simply comment this entire part out. Now we're going to go back where we get the data from our API. That's going to be use result context. Instead of here, we get the data. What we can do is we can simply check if type is ==news. In that case, we want to do something else with the data. Let's simply rename what we return. Let's do a simple console log right there, where we're going to console log the data inside of an object like this. Now I'm going to reload the page, and we cannot see anything yet, even though we are on the news. Let's do one more time. Still no errors. I'm going to pull this outside of this type, and I'm also going to console log the type itself to see if we're maybe missing. Okay, there we go. The type is actually news, and then we added the query to it. So it's not going to be the same, but we can check if the type starts with or includes. So let's do if type.includes, and that's going to be a string of /news. In that case, we want to console log the data. So now if you reload the page, you can see that we indeed do get the data here. That data has the entries, which we need to rename. So let's simply return data.entries. Great. And we can do the same thing for all types of different search results. So we can have an else if, and we can say if type.includes /images. If it includes images, then we need to return. That's going to be data.image results. And let's check what else do we have. If it's normal results, then it's just going to be results.results. So else, that's going to be return results, or rather data.results. Great. Of course, what we should be doing instead is not returning the thing, but rather setting the results to be that thing. So right here, instead of these returns, I'm simply going to use set results and then set them to be just that. I'm going to return that. I'm going to add a parenthesis at the end. There we go. So now we're not setting the results manually. As data always, we're always setting them to be something specific. Great. So now if we go back to here, we no longer have to destructure this, and it's always going to be just results for all different use cases, because depending on this thing, we're returning different things. I know this was a bit confusing, but we really encountered something that doesn't happen often. The API we are fetching the data from named something entries, and entries is a built-in function on a JavaScript object. So that's really not a good name to name something. So now I'm going to switch this to results.map, results.map here, and finally, this is going to be results as well. There we go, results. Now let's try to save it and take a look. Make sure to save this file as well, and let's go ahead and open up our browser. I'm going to reload the page, and would you look at that? Our news results are here. You can hover over them, you can see the title, and also the link you can go to. Now I'll try to go to search to see if we messed something up. There we go, the search is here, works as well. And finally, images. And the images still work. Great. That part is working perfectly, and now we can go to the last part, which is going to be /videos. To implement the videos, we're going to do a similar thing we've done so far, but it's going to be even simpler. We're simply going to return a JSX div That div is going to have a class name equal to flex and flex wrap. Then inside of there, we also want to map over the results. That's going to be results.map. And in there, we're going to get the video and an index. And finally, for each video, we just want to return a built-in component, but first we want to wrap it with a div. That div is going to have a key equal to index and also class name, which is going to be equal to p-2 to give it some padding. And finally, inside of there, we're going to render our React player, which we imported at the top. That's going to be a self-closing component. We need to pass the URL to it, and the URL is hidden under video dot additional underscore links, and then question mark dot 0, and then dot href. There we go. Finally, we also want to give some controls to the video, and we want to set the width to be equal to 355 pixels and also the height to be equal to 200 pixels. There we go. Now, if you save this, we should be able to go to /videos. And as you can see, the videos started loading immediately. I'm going to reload one more time. And it looks like we're only getting the players, but the URLs are not there. So that's going to be video.additional underscore links and then 0.href. Let's try to console log it. We can do it right inside of here. Console.log video, just to see if we're missing something. There we go. We're getting each video, and in there we have a link. But this link is not the link of the video. It's a link of the actual search result. So we need to be able to get the videos. Let's see what's happening. If we go right there to the top, you can notice that if we are under videos, then we're going to search, and we're searching basically for the same search term, but it includes the word videos. So if we go to result context provider, in here, we should be getting the same thing as if we go with just everything else. We're returning data.results. So one more time, let's check if our video has some additional links. Let's do it like this, and I'm going to scroll to the bottom, and indeed it has. You can see there are a lot of different additional links. So did I misspell this possibly? No, it looks fine. And we want to get the 0 element from each link. So let's try to console log that as well and reload the page. Now, as you can see, we really do get all of these links, and they indeed do have an href property, which means that this is completely fine. There must be some other reason why our video player is not rendering. It looks like that our current search term is JavaScript mastery, and although we do have a lot of videos, the link that it's pulling are not the actual video links. This is just the link to the YouTube channel, so it cannot actually display it. Therefore, let's go to our context right here, and let's change the search term to something like, let's do Elon Musk. Now, as soon as the page loaded, you can notice that we got a lot of Elon Musk videos. Great. Videos now work. Now, we just have to implement the navigation bar so that we don't have to manually switch between those URLs, and also the search so that people can search anything they want. But with that said, our results page is now done. Let's go ahead and focus on our search and our links. So we already have the search component listed in our navbar. There we go, and we've already created the search page itself. So now we have to implement the search functionality as well as add those navigation links. We can start by adding the links first. Links are going to be one new final component, links.jsx. We can again do the RAFC to create the links. Again, just type links in there and then import it inside of the search right here. Import, that's going to be links, and that's going to be coming from links. Great. And then finally below the search, we can render the links as a self-closing component. There we go. Let's go ahead and test it out. There we go. Now we can see the search and the links. I'm going to go back to just /, which is going to redirect us to search. And there we go. Now we are ready to implement the links. So we can go to our links component. Inside of here, we're going to import something known as a nav link. and nav link is coming from React-router-DOM. Now inside of here, we can first create an array of links that we're going to use. Const links is going to be an array, and then each element in an array is going to be an object that's going to have a URL, something like /search, and also it's going to have a text, which is going to be something like, let's do all news. And then in there, we can also simply paste some kind of an icon like this. Just so you don't have to search, I'm going to simply copy and paste the entire links array, and you can copy it from somewhere in the description. Again, it's just 4 different objects with different icons and texts and URLs. Now that we have the links, we can actually loop over them. But first, let's create our container div. We can do that by saying class name is equal to flex. And then on small devices, we want to say the justify around. On devices of all other sizes, it's going to be justify dash between. Also, the items dash center and margin top is going to be 4. Now inside of there, we can simply use those links to map over them. We're going to get one individual link, and we can immediately destructure the URL and the text from that link. Now for each link, we can display a nav link, which is going to be a self-closing component. It's going to have the to property, which is going to be to URL, and it's also going to have the active class name, which is going to be set to text-blue-700, also border-bottom or b-2, and on dark mode, it's going to have the text-blue-300. Now we can scroll a bit to the right and collapse this. Then next to that, we're also going to have the border-blue-700. And finally, on devices of all sizes and all different modes, we're going to have the padding bottom 2. There we go. And I didn't say that correctly. This is not going to be a self-closing tag. Rather, we are going to close it. And then inside of there, we can render our text. There we go. That's great. Now let's go ahead and save it. We are already importing the links inside of our search, so we should be able to see all of them. And there we go. As you can see, we have news. It immediately redirects to news. We can also redirect to images. When I clicked on videos, something broke, and it says that the error is in results JSX 64. So let's go back to results. That's going to be line 64 right here, even though it's saying that this is news. So this might not be the case, but I do see that we have one error. This anchor tag here was supposed to be closed right here, and then this one is supposed to be closed right there. There we go. So let's now space everything correctly. We have a div. Inside of that div, we have an anchor tag with a p tag. Below that anchor tag, we have another div with another anchor tag. Great. Let's save it, and one more time reload. As you can see, now the videos are loading, and let's try to switch one final time to all to see if we can see all results. There we go. That works as well. I'm going to close the console to see how does it look like. And it seems like all of these items are too close together. So let's go ahead and fix that. We can go back to our links, and we can add a margin right here by saying class name is equal to, and we can simply say margin, and let's try to do 2. Let's save that. As you can see, this separated all of them, and now it looks much better. As you can see, now there is some space between this border and the icons from the border of the navigation bar. So let's go ahead and remove that margin on the bottom by simply saying margin bottom -0. As you can see, now this blue line is touching the border bottom of our navigation bar, and all of the links are still properly spaced out. Now the last part is to implement the search. So let's go ahead and start with that right away. We can go back to our search, and inside of here, we're going to import a few things from React. These things are going to be use effect as well as the use state. We also want to import that special utility hook we installed, which is going to be called use debounce. And that's going to be imported from React use-debounce. once you start working on more complicated projects, you're going to hear that word a lot, debounce. So what does this word debounce actually means? Well, when you work on more complicated projects and you have an input field like this, and whenever you want some changes to happen once the user types something in. For example, if he types, let's say we're searching for movies, he starts typing Superman. And as the user is typing each individual letter, a new request is going to be made. So in here, request. Then again, for you, we're going to do a request. And then for SUP, another request. This means that we're going to spam the API server and our application is going to become really, really slow. So what you want to do is you want to debounce that input. That means that we're not going to make a request once every letter changes. We're going to make it only after a certain period of time. For example, 300 milliseconds or 500 milliseconds. In that time, a user, if he's fast enough with the keyboard, can type the entire word out. And then after that, we can fetch that with only one specific request. So that's what we're going to use the debounce for. Now we also want to import our context. So we can say import use result context. And that's going to be coming from /context/result context provider. Now in here, we want to define some use states. More specifically, we want to say the text, const text, and also set text property, which is equal to use state. And then in here, we can provide a default value like Elon Musk. Then we also want to get something from the context, and we can do that by saying const set search term, and that is going to be equal to use result context. Great. Finally, we can get the debounced value by saying const debounced value, and that is equal to use debounce. And then in here, we can specify which value do we want to debounce. In our case, that's going to be text, and we want to debounce it every 300 milliseconds. Finally, we can set the use effect. We want something to happen when. So let's create our use effect. And as a dependency array, we're going to say debounced value. That means that this function is going to be executed every time that the debounced value changes, and the value changes only every 300 milliseconds. So what we can do is we can say if we have a debounced value, in that case, we want to set the search term to be equal to the debounced value. Great. Now we are ready to start implementing the actual JSX for the input. We can do that by adding a class name to this div equal to relative. Also on small devices, margin left is going to be 48. And on medium devices, margin left is going to be equal to 72. And on small devices, we're also going to have margin top, which is going to be equal to 10. And usually margin top is going to be set to 3. These are some values that I found that work the best. Now, inside of that, we're going to have our actual input, which is going to be a self-closing tag. And every input needs to have a value. In our case, that value is going to be text. Also, we can set the type of the input to be text. We can give it a class name. And again, in here, we're going to work with some different device sizes. On small devices, the width is going to be 96. Usually, the width is going to be set to 80. Our height is going to be set to 10. On dark devices, the BG is going to be gray 200. Usually, we're going to have a border. It's going to be rounded dash full. We're also going to have a shadow dash small. We're going to remove the outline by saying outline dash none. We're going to give it padding of 6. Text is going to be black, and hover is going to be set to shadow dash LG. So we're going to increase that shadow once we actually hover over it. In here, we used a variety of different utility classes. So with this line, you can really see what is the full power of our Tailwind. Great. Now we added the class name, and we just have to add the placeholder and the onChange. Our placeholder can simply say something like search goggle or type URL. And below that, we're going to have the onChange, where we're going to have a callback function in which we get the event. And once something happens, we simply want to set the text to be equal to e.target.value. Great. And we also want to show the button to clear the text, so we can say if no text, and, which means only then, show the following code. We're going to show the button. That button is going to be of a type equal to button, and it's going to have the class name equal to absolute top dash 1.5 right dash 4. Text is going to be a bit bigger, so that's 2XL. And also we're going to have text gray 500. Finally, we're going to give it an onClick property. And onClick, we simply want to clear the text, so we can say set text is equal to an empty string. And the button can simply display an X sign. There we go. This is going to be it. This is our search component. So let's go ahead and save it and see how does it work. Now is the time that I can make this Chrome look bigger. And there we go. We have Goggle, we have the entire search bar right there, and we also have our navigation bar right here. Now that I'm looking at it, this doesn't seem to be aligned. We need the search to be aligned with Goggle icon. So let's go ahead and see what that is about. Right here, we added the margin top 10, but it was supposed to be margin top minus, so minus margin top 10. There we go, now you know that you can use minuses as well. Let's go ahead and see if this fixed the issue. And there we go. Now this is straight on the top, and as you can see, it looks great. We can switch between all. Also news, as you can see right there, they have a bit of a different view, and images as well. And finally, let's try switching to videos. We get another error saying cannot read properties of undefined, reading 0. That's most likely happening here from our additional links because we forgot to remove this console log. So if we go back to our code, we're going to remove this console log, and we're also going to add one more failsafe to only render this React player if there is a video link. So what we can do is at the start, we can add a curly brace and say if video additional links .0 .href, only then render this React video player, else don't render it. We need to close this curly brace, and that's going to be it. Let's save it and take a look. And as you can see, our videos started loading immediately. It seems like there are still 2 videos that didn't load correctly, so let's reload and see if that's going to fix the issue. There we go. That if check that we added indeed fixed the issue. Great. We can also check the dark mode, and with that, it looks like we're completely done with the entire Goggle application. This is a real custom-made Google search clone. You learn how to use React context. Also learn how you can utilize RapidAPI to pull from hundreds of thousands of APIs. And finally, you learn how to use Tailwind CSS. Tailwind made all of the styling so easy. And with that, we are ready to start with the finishing steps of this video. You know that I always like to take you from the entire beginning of the creation of the empty folder all the way to deployment. So if you appreciate that, and if you appreciate me going through all the errors together with you, definitely make sure to like and comment down below. With that said, let's do one final security fix we talked about. Inside of the result context provider, we need to save this into environment variables. So you can copy this key, go right here in the root of your folder and create a new file called .env. Inside of there, we can do something like React_app and then _API_key, and that's going to be equal to the key you copied. Then you can go back to result context provider and you can simply switch this to process.env and then the name you used right inside of your env. In our case, that's going to be React_app_API key. So let's go ahead and paste it here, and that's going to work. If you want to see the changes live in the development server, you have to reload your app by simply closing it and then starting it one more time. We are not going to do that because we're immediately going to deploy our project to the internet. So to do that, you can simply run npm run build. Now React is going to prepare an optimized production build, It's going to take a minute, and then we'll be able to use this build folder to upload it to Netlify. There we go, our build finalized, and we are ready to right-click the build folder and simply click Reveal in File Explorer. Once you do that, you can go to netlify.com and log in or create an account. Inside of there, you can go to Sites, and then right inside of here, you can open that build folder and simply drag and drop it right here. The deployment process is going to take just a second, so if I still continue speaking, you should see that this is going to turn green. There we go. Before we check it out, we can go to the domain settings and simply edit the site name to something like Goggle Search JSM. And let's save it. As you can see, your website is now live under this link. And as soon as we open it, we have that nice loading, and immediately we can search for different news. Also, that debounce is going to work, so if we now try searching for JavaScript mastery, we're not going to make continuous requests, only one every 300 milliseconds. And there we go, results for JavaScript mastery. We can also search for images, news, videos, and everything else. With that said, we've came to the end of this video. I just wanted to quickly thank RapidAPI not only for sponsoring this video, but also for making an incredible API hub with hundreds of thousands of different APIs that we can use to make different applications. Again, thank you so much for watching, and if you liked this video, I would strongly encourage you to also subscribe to my new mailing newsletter. That way, you'll be up to date with the process of building the new JavaScript Mastery Pro platform, and you'll be able to choose the future projects that I put on YouTube and on the platform itself. So definitely make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.